the world watches Rome with quiet fascination. Beneath the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, history seems to breathe as if the very stones whisper secrets from millennia past. But for those who pay attention, not just to tradition but to prophecies, signs, and shadows, there's a growing sense that something more is stirring within the heart of the Vatican. For centuries, the office of the Pope has symbolized continuity and authority in the Christian world. But what if the next Pope is more than just another successor in a long line of spiritual leaders? What if the next Pope is the last? Many have long forgotten the eerie warnings of Saint Malachy, a 12th century Irish archbishop who reportedly received a prophetic vision listing the future popes, each one symbolized by a cryptic motto. These predictions, often dismissed as myth or medieval curiosity, have nevertheless tracked remarkably close to the papal line. And the final name on the list? Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman. He is described as the shepherd who will guide the flock through the final tribulations during a time of great destruction until the city of 7 hills, Rome, falls and the dreadful judge arrives. Of course, this sounds like apocalyptic folklore to many. But is it really so far-fetched when one considers the current state of global unrest, the division within the Church itself, and the profound fatigue on the face of Pope Francis? Francis, already in his late 82nds, has hinted several times that his resignation is possible, even likely. His progressive stance has shaken the foundations of the traditional Catholic structure. From his openness to interfaith dialogue, to controversial comments on issues like homosexuality, global warming, and economic inequality, he has drawn both admiration and fierce criticism. Some see him as a reformer. Others whisper darker accusations that he is preparing the Church not for revival but for convergence. Convergence with what? Or with whom? Inside the hallowed walls of the Vatican, where ancient rituals meet digital surveillance, it's said that a quiet power struggle is underway. Behind the scenes, factions form, some loyal to the traditionalist legacy of Benedict XVI, others pushing Francis's globalist vision of unity across religions. But there's a third group, according to those who study Vatican politics and ancient prophecy, a hidden faction that awaits the rise of one who will not merely lead the Church but redefine it entirely. Some believe that this individual, this so-called Petrus Romanus, will rise during a time of unprecedented crisis, a crisis that may be manufactured or manipulated to create the conditions for a savior-like figure to emerge. Imagine a global economic collapse, or a major war in the Middle East, or a scandal so vast it shakes the credibility of every world leader. In that void, who better to step in than a spiritual leader backed by centuries of authority? Now, here's where the theories begin to converge. Geopolitical thinkers, biblical scholars, and even fringe researchers have noticed increasing alignment between modern global movements and ancient prophecies. They point to Daniel's visions, to the book of Revelation, and to Jesus' own words in Matthew 24 about deception, apostasy, and the appearance of false Christs. Could the next pope, especially if he were charismatic, tech-savvy, and aligned with global institutions, be the one to unify a weary world? Not just Catholics, but Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, agnostics, all under a new banner of peace, tolerance, and coexistence? What if this leader were to embrace artificial intelligence as a tool for spiritual guidance, begin to restructure the sacraments into more inclusive experiences, and even suggest that all paths ultimately lead to the same divine source? It would sound like progress to many, but to others it would sound like the great falling away. In theological terms, this is called apostasy, a turning away from true doctrine. But from a socio-political standpoint, it would be a masterstroke of influence, a religion reborn, not under the cross, but under a new symbol of unity, one perhaps bearing echoes of Babel rather than Bethlehem. But let's return to Malachy. Many argue that the prophecy cannot be trusted. The list was not even widely known until several hundred years after it was allegedly written. Skeptics argue it's a forgery, a pious fraud, and yet it is eerily accurate. Even those popes whose reigns were short-lived or insignificant seem to reflect their corresponding mottos. Francis, listed as Peter the Roman by some interpreters, though the prophecy's wording is debated, was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the son of Italian immigrants to Argentina, a Roman by bloodline, though not by birthplace. Could the Peter the Roman title refer not to a literal name, but to a spiritual posture, one who returns the Church to its Roman imperial past, or even to its darkest ambitions? It's important to note that historically, every time a major transition occurred in the papacy, the world changed. Think of Leo the Great during the fall of the Western Roman Empire, or Urban II during the Crusades, or John Paul II as communism crumbled. The Pope is not just a religious leader. He is, in many ways, a global actor, sometimes quiet, sometimes front and center. And right now, as we stand on the brink of ecological tipping points, AI revolutions, moral relativism, and geopolitical instability, a new papal election may not simply mark a religious transition, it could be a pivotal moment in world history. What if the next pope is already chosen? There are whispers, unconfirmed of course, that certain figures within the Vatican have already groomed a candidate. A man young enough to carry the vision forward for decades, fluent in multiple languages, trained in diplomacy, and perhaps even in data science. He may wear robes of humility, but beneath them is a mind sharpened for global leadership. There are rumors of secret meetings, code-named conclaves outside the formal papal electoral process. Some even speculate about connections between these gatherings and elite global forums, the same ones that push for centralized digital currency, global identity systems, and interfaith dialogue. If this sounds like conspiracy, it's worth remembering that the Vatican is one of the most secretive institutions on Earth. Its archives contain documents that date back over 1,000 years, many never opened to the public. It is a state within a state, with its own intelligence networks, diplomatic channels, and financial apparatus. And it has survived for 2,000 years through wars, reformations, and revolutions. So ask yourself, what kind of man could be chosen to lead it into its final chapter? Could he be a servant or a deceiver? Could he be the fulfillment of prophecy, or the greatest counterfeit ever seen? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if the next pope is the last, what happens after?